Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the final day of the 2020 National E&T Forum. Thank you so much for joining us again on this Thursday. We're excited to be here. What an amazing week it has been. I am so thankful for the work of our team and our partners on putting this conference together, particularly in the virtual format that has turned out so wonderful for all of us to come together and talk about how we can better serve folks. This morning, I have the opportunity to share something special with you. I'll start by talking about, since my arrival here at USDA, I have been inspired by two people that I work very close with, my boss, Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue, and our Deputy Secretary of Agriculture, Steve Sinskey, who have been passionate about our mission at USDA and ensuring that all Americans have access to food, but also that as we provide that food, that we're working every day to move families forward. As I told you in an earlier session, the question is, are we working to make folks better off tomorrow than they are today through the services that we provide? And both Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue and Deputy Secretary Sinskey have been passionate about that since day one and continue to inspire that vision in me and our team every day. Their leadership and constant engagement has allowed us to do the important things that we're able to do at the Food and Nutrition Service, including this very conference. When I told them that our team was planning this conference and suggested that we put on the first national forum on E&T that's ever been held to help us serve more people to a better outcome, they both asked to participate. And today I'm here to say that you're going to get to have participation from both of them this morning. I had the pleasure this past week of traveling to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania with Secretary Perdue as he awarded to Goodwill International a partnership grant to help them expand the capacity on the amazing things that Goodwill does in helping move so many of our SNAP participants forward and into the workforce to experience the dignity of work that you and I know. While we were there on site in Harrisburg, the Secretary was able to sit down with the CEO of Goodwill International, Steve Preston, and just have a conversation about the importance of the very things we've been talking about this week, about how we can serve our families better, how we can move them forward, and how we do that with a human-centered design focusing on what they do. Also, Deputy Secretary Steve Sinskey has been passionate about these programs and has traveled around the country at his request to see our work in action, to see how we're moving families forward, and to help inform us with that passion as we move forward. I am thankful for the leadership of these two individuals. I'm thankful for their participation today, and I hope that you will enjoy the commitment that these individuals have provided and the leadership that they're giving to us. I want to thank them for their participation in the conference today. We're going to have a short video from Secretary Perdue and his conversation with Steve Preston, followed by a short video from Deputy Secretary Steve Sinskey. And then please don't leave. The great Jessica Shaheen will return to moderate live Q&A with me on some of the important aspects of E&T that we've covered this week. Thank you again for joining us this morning. And now we will turn to Mr. Secretary.
Hello everyone, I'm Sonny Perdue, and thank you all for joining us today for the first ever USDA SNAP Educational and Training National Work Forum, and I want to thank you for being here today. I have the pleasure of being here in Pennsylvania today with Goodwill International CEO Steve Preston, and Steve has been a huge advocate. You probably know the work of Goodwill better than I do maybe, but I've always been impressed with their effort. As I told people, they're not just a drop-off box. They really deliver hope. They use those resources in a way that brings hope from lifting people up. And really our focus on moving families forward, Steve, that's what I want to compliment Goodwill about, and giving people hope for that first job that can enable them to continue to move forward in that regard. So thank you for allowing us to come here today, and I, again, appreciate the work that you and leading Goodwill and all your affiliates across the country do each and every day for education and training.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of it.
Yeah. I know I'm familiar with it, having been in Governor of Georgia. I had a great relationship with our affiliates there in Georgia. But tell us about the foundation and the principles of Goodwill and what drives you all every day.
You're right. Most people do know us for our stores because they provide us with those donations and they shop in those stores. We've got 3,300 of them across the continent, and we're very thankful to our donors and our shoppers because an important part of those stores is both providing people with work opportunities in the stores. Many of them people who've got challenges. This might be their first job on the pathway to something much through a series of advancements, or within Goodwill or beyond Goodwill. So we employ 141,000 people. We also use the funding from those stores to the extent that we have profits, as well as USDA support and other agencies, to provide workforce development programs across the continent. And so we have over 1,000 locations where people can come in and get support if they are on their pathway to a job. What I would say about Goodwill is we believe that there is something special about work. Right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, there are the economic benefits that a family gets when they have an income coming in and they can sustain themselves. But I think we also forget the fact that work provides dignity. Work provides a place to contribute your talents and your gifts. It provides a community, and it is so, I think, essential fundamentally to human flourishing. And really, that's what we all want as people. We all want to thrive in what we do. And so well beyond the critical importance of helping people be able to sustain their lives financially, work provides something, I think, much greater and much more essential to human flourishing. And that's why I'm here. And that's what excites me so much about what we do.
It's magical, is it not?
It really is. You and I had a chance to watch a video before this discussion, and we heard from a woman who was in a desperate point in her life. And through the work that she invested in herself, that we were able to, we kind of come alongside people, right? We don't do it for them, but we help them along the way. A number of years later, she's on the top of the world. She's basically saying, I'm unstoppable. I've got confidence. I can pay my bills. I'm self-sufficient. And we see a fundamental change, a foundational change in a person's life that is sustainable and gives them a whole different vision for their future.
I couldn't say it better. Actually, it just makes your heart warm to hear people
really
moving from a life of utter dependence and lack of hope into the dignity that you described, being able to provide for themselves. I think, I don't believe anyone's American dream is to be continually dependent upon someone else. So that's a great work that you do.
Well,
As you know, probably from USDA's work, the SNAP program, our supplemental nutritional benefits, it's a huge program. It's the food stamp program that has grown up. But most people don't know there's an educational and training component to that. In fact, in 1996, when this program was first developed, it allowed people to be on there. If they were not disabled, it had an expectation of work going forward. And I frankly don't think we have fulfilled that mission as well as we have fed everyone in that regard. And now with our program of moving families forward, that's what we want to do. Exactly what you described, I think, in the mission of Goodwill and doing that. And we want to help people with people like you. Now, USDA, Food Nutrition Services, can't do all that. We have to depend on partners like you. And we've got many partners today viewing that today that we want to call them to the work of moving families forward, because you've seen the thrill, the emotional thrill that germinates in someone when they get that confidence there to go to work and provide for themselves. We hear of it all the time.
Yeah.
So can you tell us ideas, maybe more how you could recommend for USDA and our Food Nutrition Services to be inspired in helping people like Goodwill across the country to do even more?
Well, sure, and let me just emphasize right off the bat the importance of partnerships, because we really all play different roles in this, in helping people move forward in life, and you all have programs where you can work with local community providers. But when you get into that community, number one, you need people who know the community, because they know who the people are that need the help. They know what their challenges are. They also know what the job opportunities are, so they can be relevant. So the fact that you recognize that the need is not only in the community, but the providers need to understand the need in that community is an essential part of this program. The other thing is, we do a lot of things at Goodwill, but we also partner with people. We partner with community colleges. We partner with housing providers. We partner with people that provide childcare and transportation services. And so having a federal partnership that connects with local community organizations in a way that's relevant to helping people advance their lives in that community context is essential to making it work. Because you can't dictate this stuff from Washington, right? Because you don't know what's happening. You don't know what's happening in Georgia here, or you don't know what's happening in Wisconsin or in Petersburg. But you can partner with people, and that's I think the power in a program like this, is that partnership role that leans into both or all parties, unique skills and unique competencies.
As we talk more about moving families forward, our goal is really inspiring all of our partners across the country to believe in what you've described so adequately and eloquently is that dignity of work and hope. I know we think of goodwill for clothing and other types of things, but really what you deal in is hope in that regard, and the stories that you've seen are just absolutely amazing. So hopefully that's what can be part of our regimen going forward, and food nutrition services going forward. I like what our leader, Undersecretary Brandon Lips, talks about, the ABCs of a better life. A better life. We want to make the life of our constituents and our customers each day better than the day before, and that means a ramp up to an independent lifestyle in that way, to get a job, B, a better job, C, leading to a career for these people. And there's some amazing stories out there of people who began at places like Goodwill and others who followed that, and they come back and tell us those stories that are very inspiring.
Well, you mentioned the word hope, and I think what we find often with the people that come through our doors is they don't have. Often people are lacking hope, but they don't also. Part of the reason for that is they don't have a vision for what's possible. And your comment about a better job, and a career talks about that pathway where a person in the process of developing themselves and seeing what the possibilities are. It's sort of like the aperture opens up and they see a whole lot more. And we have a particular story of one of our participants that I got to know that always sits with me, and she said, where I grew up, people didn't talk about career paths. And she came to Goodwill. We gave her a job. She began advancing and she got a better job. But at the same time, she was going through a digital skills training program. And at the end of that, she moved into a career with Google. And at the end of this, we did a little video about with her, and at the end of it, she says, "I'm shooting for the stars." She starts out saying, people didn't talk, and she was homeless. People didn't talk about career paths where I was. My two little girls and I were homeless, and at the end of the video, she says, "I'm shooting for the stars." And that's the same progression, and that possibility exists with millions of people who need to see what that hope looks like and need to get access to the training and support that they need to kind of move through that process.
The word picture I'm thinking of as you talk about that, imagination. I grew up in the era of black and white television. And you think about that.
As did I.
And think about that, the evolution that we've seen there from color and then to high definition and now to 4K as far as the clarity and the vision of what people can have for a life. Think about moving just from black and white television to what we see on these big screens now, even these jumbotrons. That's what life can be like when people have that hope delivered by people like Goodwill in that way. And that's what we want to ask all of our participants out here in our Educational Work and Training Forum to really think about the possibility that will thrill your heart as we do that. So I want to thank you, Steve, for allowing us to be here at Goodwill in the Keystone area of Pennsylvania. I want to thank all of you for joining on this last day of our National Work Forum for educational training aspect of our food nutrition services. Let's go get them and deliver that hope to our constituents and our customers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for joining the first annual SNAP Employment and Training National Forum. It's surprising to think that this is the first time USDA has gathered its national, state, and local partners for an event such as this, but I understand it has been a jam-packed and useful 3 days. In my time at USDA, I have come to truly appreciate the role that SNAP E&T plays in the lives of millions of families we serve each year through SNAP. I want to thank you for your service to ensure Americans can get back on their feet and are equipped to have a good job and support their families. E&T transformed SNAP from a program that puts money on a card each month to being about wraparound services and support to help each individual discover his or her own potential. People have immense potential. What all of you do is help connect the dots and train them to be competitive in the job market, and that's a noble task. Secretary Perdue and I have focused on ways we can support and encourage those that can work to take proactive steps to moving forward and towards employment. This is a mission that is critical to USDA and has been my privilege for almost 3 years to help lead our efforts. We at the department believe in the dignity of work and that no one should ever be underestimated. Work is immensely transformative and is a key component of moving people's lives forward and helping them achieve their own American dream. For many of those we serve, it has not always been an easy road, but they come out on the other side taking pride in what they have accomplished, armed with the tools to succeed. I have seen the transformative effects of E&T firsthand. Last year, when I was in New Orleans, I visited Covenant House, where they rescue thousands of abused, orphaned, and trafficked youth from the streets annually. The compassion of the folks who run the house and the stories of the people they are serving and in the process of transforming their lives and building back their confidence is heartwarming and makes you feel so encouraged that we are still able to help our fellow Americans build for themselves a better life. For some, it's as simple as a temporary roof over their head and something we take for granted, like coaching on how to do a good job interview. One gentleman was given an opportunity to apply for a job at the New Orleans Superdome, and it was the saints at the Covenant House that gave him the confidence and skills to succeed. In December of last year, I also had the privilege of speaking at a graduation in Baltimore for a healthcare training program, which was funded by Employment Advancement Right Now, or EARN, in the state of Maryland. The EARN initiative provides state-funded competitive workforce development grants that are industry-led, regionally focused, and intended to help businesses cultivate the skilled workforce they need to compete. It was moving to see these hardworking individuals graduate with real skills and see the joy in their families showered upon them. And they should be proud because what they learned are real skills, and it is a true achievement they earned through hard work and dedication. Skills that can transcend the technical. Since receiving EARN funding in 2017, the Healthcare Strategic Partnership in Maryland has been led by Humanum, a nonprofit organization that has more than 40 programs focused on human services, workforce development, and social enterprise. The work they do to transform their community one person at a time is an example of why E&T is so important. What I have learned in my travels is that we can do it. Now let's do more of it. As Martin Luther King Jr. taught, all labor that uplifts humanity has dignity and importance and should be undertaken with painstaking excellence. The values E&T instills in the participants go a long way in reigniting the sense of dignity and pride individuals have in themselves. My hope is that this first ever E&T Forum has you re-energized and ready to return to your organization, including our federal staff here at USDA, to help more SNAP E&T participants realize their potential as we move more families forward.
Well, welcome back. I am here with Brandon Lips, our Deputy Undersecretary. And Brandon, wasn't that wonderful, the kind of leadership we have that supports us through all of our efforts. It's so meaningful. And, you know, one of the things that I was struck by when I was listening to the videos is all the hope. The whole theme that we've been talking about over the last few days and moving people forward with hope. Our leadership really is supporting us through all of this. And speaking of leadership, thank you for being here and being on the hot seat, because what we're going to do now, folks, is we're going to ask Brandon some questions about employment and training. So go to the virtual platform, go to Ask a Question, and please let us know what you're thinking and what your questions for Brandon are. We've got a few already. So we're going to start with our first one from Jennifer Hemricks from Missouri. Jennifer is wondering about the future of employment and training, Brandon. And I think it's a perfect question for us to start out on, because we have so much that we have learned over the last few days. Best practices, lessons learned. Also, we've learned about some challenges, the things that can help us know what E&T should be in the future. But I'd like to know what you think.
Well, we talk a lot about that, Jessica, and I think it's a great question. I would say the future is now. I think we have talked about that this week, and I know sometimes that saying, people are like, well, that's nice, but what does he mean by that? I really think that the opportunity with E&T is before us. We've talked about a lot of challenges this week, but your team, our team, has worked so hard to talk to our partners about how we overcome those challenges, how we help people move forward, how we help our partners serve our families better, and how we help our families move forward. But we've seen so much success. You talk about the hope, even in the secretary and the deputy secretary's video, and the deputy secretary said, I hope that your team is re-energized to participate in this. I'll say a lot of us don't need more energy. Folks probably recognize that from our earlier session and from the speed at which sometimes I talk. But I think the future is now. You know, I think about, I was at a site that wanted to participate in E&T one time. We were trying to help them get there, and we were talking about some of their challenges. Obviously, one of the difficulties with that is people have to be enrolled in the SNAP program to participate in E&T. And that particular provider told me that they sometimes have trouble with individuals who are actually in need of food assistance, getting on food assistance so they can participate in E&T because of the stigma that sometimes comes with this program. And we talk a lot about that. We want to make sure that Americans in need have access to adequate nutrition. It's our first task every day, but to make sure that we're helping move those families forward. It goes back to what you and I said in the opening session when you and I had our offsite and you said that SNAP should be seen as E&T and E&T as SNAP. That really is the future of E&T. We want to make sure that this program is seen every day as an integral and pivotal part of the SNAP program so that folks know that nutrition assistance is there for them when they need it, but so is the opportunity to move forward. It takes them making that decision that they're ready and willing to do that, but our team's ready to support our partners, and we know our partners, particularly after this week, are going to be re-energized to go help those families. So I think that there's wonderful opportunity ahead of us to expand in the ways that we talked about, the Secretary talked about with Steve Preston at Goodwill International and capacity building. That is the future, but the success is in front of us. We see that in so many places, and we just got to work on replicating it so we can serve more Americans.
Absolutely, and I think to your point, leadership, we're so fortunate to have what we have at USDA with the secretary, with the deputy secretary, with you and Pam. But we have leaders all through this country, whether it's at the state agencies or it's our partners, the CEO from Goodwill. How could we ask for a better leader and partner?
That was great.
So lots of leaders out there that are going to take us into the future.
Leadership really is important, and you know, one of the beautiful things about E&T we talk about a lot is that it is a local program that's locally designed. It's got to be designed first of all to the local workforce, but also meeting those families where they are to enter into the local workforce. And so for all the wonderful leadership that we do have at USDA, yours included, and you have a wonderful team, it requires those local leaders that really put this into practice, and that's where the future of E&T exists.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Okay, well, we have another question. This one is from Tanya Gabellino and Courtney Hagel.
Okay.
They're with the California Foundation for Community Colleges.
Great.
And they want to know, is there anything FNS can do to reduce administrative burdens within SNAP ENT, especially for participants?
Sure. That's something that the team's committed to every day. And Jessica, I know there were a number of sessions this week focused on that. So I know some of these questions were pre-submitted, so I do want to refer folks back to the sessions and even those that come today. We talk so much about helping the participants, but also the providers and serving them. And it comes down to things as simple as the Notice Project, again, that you mentioned in our opening comments. There are a lot of ways that we can help with that. Now, I don't want to give anybody a promise that doesn't exist. We have a great duty at USDA to make sure that federal funds we take from taxpayers to use for a purpose that Congress intended are used in the manner that they intended them to be served. And there are a lot of important rules and regulations around that. But we know that they can be used within those guidelines to serve folks well. Sometimes that gets lost in translation. Sometimes, Jessica, it appears there's red tape that's not actually there. And I think we talked about that a little bit in the federal panel that I was on. Bring to us those questions and concerns about where you feel the red tape is unnecessary, and let us see if we can help that. I know that Jessica's team, Moira, all the folks in OET are committed to helping that, and certainly your regional offices are. Practically speaking, one of the great things we've done, particularly for some of our smaller providers, is start working on ENT intermediaries. So sometimes it's that the requirements are necessary and there's a lot of work to be done in that. And some of our smaller providers who do a wonderful job of wrapping the services around those recipients, but they don't have the back office in place to meet all the federal requirements. And so we've had intermediaries start coming in who are able to work through some of that, serving between the state and the local provider to help them replicate what they're doing and bring more of those smaller providers on. It's one of the things, Jessica, I know you know, that I'm really excited about and that we talk about a lot. So there are a number of ways we can help. We've talked about in the sessions this week, but bring us your particular questions and we do want to help you work through those.
Okay, great. So we have one that has come in through the Ask a Question portal that we've got on the virtual platform. So let's see how we do on this next one. Brandon, we have Gwen Schmidt-Haynes who is asking, do you anticipate ever being able to offer a stipend to SNAP ENT participants while they are in training?
Jessica, I think they're asking if the feds are ever going to pay for that stipend. And unfortunately, I think the answer is no. We have determined, and I want you to know that when we say no on something that we know can help our participants, our families, that our team at FNS has done all they can to try to answer that question. And we work closely with our friends in the Office of General Counsel at USDA. But funds are directed for a particular purpose. Now, again, the beauty of the local partnerships that we have is I know a lot of our ENT participants do get stipends. They come from other sources of funds, from local providers, large organizations. There are a number of places that can work. We know that our families need to be supported while they're going through these work training programs, and there's a number of ways to do that. Stipends can be very important. It can also be very important. I think you heard Lighthouse talk about yesterday about how they've shortened their programs because they have a number of families that are interested in entering, but they just don't think they can hang in for 6 to 9 weeks. It's not the right place for their family. For some families it is, but for some it's not. And so she's now offering a shorter program there with her team at Lighthouse. So there's a lot of ways to support folks in that. The short answer is no. You won't see that without a congressional change. You won't see USDA paying for stipends. We do understand that they can be very important, and a number of our partners have figured out how to do that with other sources of funds.
Absolutely, and I think that's been one of the important things that we have heard is employment and training, you can really leverage what you can do with the SNAP employment and training with the other workforce system and other partner kind of thing. That includes not only the services, but the funds for those services.
Right.
So we can very often help you figure out how to do that braiding of funds, how to think about that a little bit. So once again, going back to that resource you mentioned earlier, Brandon, talk to your regions, talk to your regional administrators, your SNAP director in the FNS regions. They can be a wonderful source of information and technical assistance.
They can.
Okay, so our next question. Oh, you're going to love this one,
All right.
Brandon. This one is from Andrea McConnell with the Minnesota Department of Human Services. And she wants to know if you anticipate ever capping the 50% reimbursement funds as states continue to grow their programs.
Do you know how I feel about that, Jessica?
I kind of do, yeah.
I'll give you a short answer on that one as well as no. I don't anticipate that those will ever be kept. In statute, it's an open-ended program. Now, my team makes me qualify that Congress does have to appropriate those funds every year. But I'll tell you, just like the SNAP benefit, which is an appropriated entitlement, when Congress says y'all go take care of folks in these manner, so long as we're doing our job well, Congress continues to fund those. So the only way I see that being capped is if we don't do our job of ensuring that the benefits are delivered in the way that they need to be. That's why this conference is so important. We're taking our regions, see our partners doing wonderful stuff all day, every day. And we have ENT staff in every region who are committed to helping our partners do that, but also to identify those best practices and to replicate them nationally. So they feed that up to the national office. They feed it to their partners, to other regions, so we can share that around. But we also see where folks have stumbled and where they have made mistakes. We have to make sure that we minimize those mistakes, those challenges, so that we're being very effective in the outcomes. Folks are always interested in the outcomes for these families, and we should be too. Ultimately, it is, have we moved them forward? And I think as long as we're on that track, that certainly we will be committed to continuing to expend those funds. And that's one of the reasons that I'm so committed to us expanding ENT nationwide, to give the capacity building grants to folks like Goodwill International, because we see them doing an amazing job moving families forward, and the type of stories that I've told where lives are changed, incomes are changed, local economies are changed. We have the ability to replicate that, and at the end of the day, that benefits everyone. So as long as we stay on that path, again, I say the future is now, I don't think we'll be capping those funds.
That's the answer I thought you were going
All
to
right,
give,
that's
but I sure do like hearing it. So I do want to remind folks, just real quickly, there is the Ask a Question feature that we have on the virtual homepage. So please ask him the tough question. Ask him what you've always wanted to ask. Brandon is one of the most accessible people you'll ever hope to meet, and he is happy to take the questions even if they're tough ones.
Well, and if they're too tough, I'll defer them to you.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so the next one is from Christine San Nicolas.
Okay.
And she's with the Guam Department of Public Health and Social Services. I think you're going to appreciate this one too, Brandon. What Christine would like to know is, what are some strategies or recommendations for how to better serve SNAP ENT participants in rural, isolated, and or underserved areas?
Jessica, I want to intro my response to that question by noting, those of you who watched the first session know that Jessica and I are both Texans, and when I tend to be around one, my accent gets worse. So if I'm a little heavy on my rural Texas accent this morning, I apologize, but it's really Jessica's fault. But I say that to preface that I grew up in a rural area, and I had 6 people in my class at the small school that I went to. We had 110 from kindergarten to 12th grade. So I do understand rural. And I think that we need to be careful, particularly when we're looking at anti-poverty programs, that we don't get in a box of serving just rural or just urban or those in between, and that we recognize while there are a lot of similarities across families in poverty, in rural areas and in urban areas, there's also a lot of differences. Again, the beauty of ENT is that it can be designed by a local provider, a local leader who knows how to meet those families where they are and to find out what they need. But we do know that accessing services in rural areas can often be more difficult than in suburban areas because folks are so spread out. And the question is, how do we bring those services to them? We either bring the families to the service or we bring the service to the families. And that can always be difficult. We talk so much about transportation. Since the day I started here, you and I have had so many conversations about that. We can help with transportation costs in SNAP ENT. Mm-hmm. So there is some opportunities there. Some rural counties, rural states have figured out how to provide transportation in a manner that allows them to move their families forward in ENT programs. I think one of the most exciting things is the way we have learned to serve individuals virtually right now. When we look back, we're not there yet, but I'm excited about, we've talked on our team, our leadership team, about after action reports on flexibilities that we've allowed during COVID. Does some of that make sense for the future?
Sure.
And certainly I think one of those is how we help our partners work in a virtual environment, because you can serve more folks and you can serve them where they are. Now, I don't ever want to lose the personal human interaction of that. I've been so excited to be in a room 8 foot from Jessica all week. It's been really exciting. But that's not where we are now. But these laptop loaner programs are wonderful. This afternoon, I won't get too much into the detail, the experts are going to talk about how this has happened. A great group called Climb Wyoming and University of Tennessee Extension have done some amazing things in serving rural constituents. So tune in this afternoon and you'll learn a lot more details on that. I do want to put a plug in for University of Tennessee Extension, and I'm sad to say that I haven't gone and visited this yet, but it's one of the things that I'm excited to do soon. For those of you who don't know, Extension operates in almost every county in this country. It's by the very nature what they do to send information in. So there's not an employment and training expert in every county in Tennessee, but there's an access point. And if you want to move families forward, if you want to meet them where they are, then be where they are. And folks in small towns know where their extension office is, and now you can walk in and say, these are my abilities, these are my challenges. I would like to get back in the workforce, or I would like to move up in the workforce. And those individuals in those offices are trained to help them find that connection. I'm excited about that.
I can tell.
Tune in.
I can tell you're excited about it. I can feel the excitement of it. And that is really, that's kind of the special thing I think we have going on here, is that in looking at the challenges and the barriers, we can get excited about what is the answer to that. South Carolina had or participated in one of the sessions earlier this week, and she was talking about the fact that transportation used to be a barrier. It isn't a barrier right now because everything's operating virtually. So this change, she has a new challenge. It's called technology. Being able to make sure that people have access to the technology to use the virtual platforms. So they talked about how they solved these challenges and how they have shifted and turned. And that's what's exciting, is nothing has to stay the same. We can grow and evolve, and I think that's what ENT is doing. So we have another question.
Okay.
This is from Wes Gibson, who is in a job training program in Houston. Welcome, Wes. Your question is, what's your plan for states that don't have active ENT programs? Yowza.
Well, Jessica, you've heard me talk about this. You could probably answer this one as well. Wes, I'll say this. Statute mandates that every state has an ENT program, and so to some extent they all do. They don't all have the ENT program that I envision for them. So you want to talk about the future being now. We got some states that the future's got a little ways to go to being now for some of the other states. But again, the beauty of this conference is that we're inspiring passion in those folks. If you participated in this conference this week and you don't have a passion for expanding ENT in your state to see what's happening in some of these other stuff, I talk about University of Tennessee Extension, Climb Wyoming, Goodwill International. I think inspiration is the #1 way to get states to participate in this in an active ENT program. We go back to our conversation about leadership. All programs start with leadership. So we have a job. All of you tuned in today have a job. Sometimes on my stump speech, I talk about having a story. Everybody's got to have a story. I've told you some stories this week. You've heard a lot of stories this week. If you believe in ENT and you don't have a story to tell when people ask you about that, then you're not doing what you need to be do to inspire hope. My job is to inspire state leadership in that. So I want you to know that I am well aware. We went through an exercise both before and after our offsite that I mentioned before COVID started, I guess late winter, early spring. where our teams went through and briefed me deeply on what every state has going in their ENT programs, where they're succeeding, where they're lacking, what their challenges are, how can we help. And I was going about and continue to go about even virtually, meeting with state leadership to talk about the importance of these programs in serving their populations. Workforce training is not a one-size-fits-all. We talked about that on the federal panel. And so states have approached that in different ways. But we know that there's a special sauce about SNAP ENT that serves our SNAP participants well. And we believe that it fits in to that braided rope of federal workforce training and has a place. Right. And we want to make sure that all the states understand that. So everybody's got to advocate locally for ENT. And you have to know that I am ready, willing, and I think able to convince state leadership that they need to participate. And part of the event, the purpose of events like the Secretary and I had last week, where we're making national news on national grants for Goodwill International. And we've got other grants similar to that we're going to announce soon to replicate this stuff, is all about making folks take note about the difference that we're making in the lives of our families. Yeah. And in the lives of families that give them both short and long-term hope to success. And that will sell. It takes time, energy, and commitment. You know, this is not the easy part. This takes time, energy, and commitment. But we can get there. We've got some stuff we're doing in national policy making to make sure that folks are paying attention to their obligation to provide ENT. It's in statute. Yeah. I can point it out for you if you want to see it. But to also make sure we're giving them the resources and support they need to carry that out in the way that it ought to be carried out. And we work on that every day. So reach out to us. Let us know how you think we can help. I'll let you know that we've done some work on some particular states. I don't want to call anybody out at the conference. I hope they're on and listening. But we're doing a lot of work behind the scenes, and we'll continue to do that. So help us spread that message. We're excited to get more states involved on a heavier front. That same session that Lighthouse was in yesterday, the Maryland director, Dacre Anderson, was in. And I understand in her history that, of course, she used to be an FNSer, so we're a little partial. But she was able to come into Maryland and really help them identify and overcome their challenges and develop a very successful program in relatively short time, Jessica. Yeah. And I think we can do that in other states. So let us know where we can help. We're here and we're committed, as are our regional administrators.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's see, we have a question from S. Williams. Are you open to reviewing the guidelines about using SNAP ENT funds to purchase laptops and peripheral equipment to help participants meet ENT goals? So this is, of course, one of those new world kind of things for us, isn't it, Brandon?
This is
the opportunity and the challenge of operating in a virtual world and trying to ensure that we can assist.
Sure.
And there are a couple of things that I think we're looking to do in this area. But did you want to talk about this at all?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. These folks may not know. Sometime recently we released some guidance on this very issue, I know. And our team can make sure that's available to you. I know we discussed, we may have a session on this very issue as well. I'm not sure we have one on this technical issue.
We don't have a session on this particular issue, I don't think, but this is exactly something, I'm seeing this in almost every session that I'm attending, in the chats and the conversations. So we do provide funds for the laptop loaner program. And we've got this going on, but we know there's still more questions on this. Yeah. So we are starting to have some conversations with the financial management folks and the states and all the different stakeholders so that we understand what's needed and think about how we can get there. Yeah. We heard from a lot of states and folks that said, you know what, I use this funding for the laptop, and I use my SNAP ENT for this.
Right.
And so they talk about the different things that they do. And so another one of the great opportunities of this conference is the networking and hearing what others are doing.
It is, and those are the type of questions that our regional team can be so helpful with.
Absolutely.
Is I've seen this work over here and this work over here, and here's how you can braid those funds. And that's part of what we want to do and what we're talking about in that federal panel is also identify those across programs where they've worked. And again, that's a more difficult task, but we're committed to that. But it came up, again, I keep referencing that session, but it was a really great session that I got to watch yesterday. I didn't get to watch as many as I wanted. But both Lighthouse and JARC are both doing laptop loaner programs, and they talked about that and the importance of having those for the families that they're serving. So there will be a lot of technical, detailed questions on laptop loaner program and what's a laptop and what can we pay for it with. And our team's committed to that. And our team does a great job, and they'll respond quickly to you if they don't. My email address is not hard to find, but we're always committed. Generally, if you don't get a response as quickly as you want, we're still working on it. But we are committed to moving that quickly. So let us know if we need to move more quickly on some of that. But the short answer is yes, you can use funds for laptop loaner programs, and we're still working on some of the details around that. But we want you to do that.
Okay, wonderful. All right. You know, you've mentioned Climb, Wyoming, and we've just gotten a question from Katie Hogarty with
Katie.
Climb, Wyoming. And she says that we are curious about how you are using human-centered design to prioritize employment during COVID.
Sure. Katie, y'all run a wonderful program at Climb, Wyoming. I know that I haven't been able, you came to visit me and brought some young ladies who brought their story with them that I was inspired by, and then the secretary was able to make a visit up to Climb, Wyoming, and that's really one of the points at which the beauty of SNAP E&T and how well it serves in moving families forward was connected. So I know y'all do a great job on that on the front end, but you know, really COVID has hit so many families so hard. It's been a difficult time and continues to be. But there has been, while not as positive as it was pre-pandemic, there's been some positive news in the continual opening up of new jobs. And the reality is that as I talk to so many of our providers that we know do a good job, not only have they continued to serve people, but they've continued to be able to move them into jobs. And so I think that's just what the focus is, Katie, on finding those jobs locally where we know these individuals can go into, jobs that will put them in environments that they can succeed even under the current conditions. That's a good place for everybody. And there's a lot of pivoting. We talk about, the Deputy Secretary mentioned his visit to Covenant House, a wonderful place. You want to talk about stories, Jessica. They take young men and women, often off the streets, who've been abused, neglected, and bring them into what's basically a homeless shelter for young adults. And but they're inspired, he told me, because of E&T, to serve them all the way through to employment. If you know anything about New Orleans, the scene is hotels, it's tourism. It's really a tough place to find jobs right now, because that's what a lot of the training at Covenant House was for, those areas. But even still, I talked to Jim recently, and they're finding opportunity to move, to pivot, and to move the folks they're serving into employment. Nobody's stopping. But it's the leaderships of folks locally, like Jim and Katie, who are saying, let's meet our families where they are. Let's find out what their needs are, what their abilities are, and then let's search for jobs that they can fit into, employers who will take care of them and serve them well. And it is more difficult in this time. I want to recognize that for everybody. But so many local leaders are doing such a good job.
Right. And I think, you know, also in the spirit of that question of the human-centered design and meeting people where they are, what are their circumstances, and so forth, this may be a point in time when perhaps new training, new skills, maybe, exactly, will have a lot of opportunity as well.
Yeah. And I did, sorry to defer, but I saw some discussion yesterday on actually one of the chat boards about how many folks end up back in E&T after they have found a job. And I don't know what that particular statistic is. I think it probably varies locally. And some will end up back in, but particularly in the type of job that a lot of people go into when we're talking about often entry-level jobs, those may come and go. But what I know that E&T does such a good job, it's not just a skills training job. I mean, it's not just a skills training program, right? So I met a young gentleman in Oregon, actually in Washington, who had gone through a culinary training program, and they brought him to talk to me on my visit to Washington. And, you know, my first, so I asked him how his job's going, and he says, oh, well, I run a moving company. And so my first thought is, Snap E&T paid for this young man to go through a culinary training program, and he's running a moving company. What sense does that make? Is that success? Well, in reality, it is. One, because he's a great chef and he cooks for his family now, who's been reunited. His story is wonderful. He's in one of our videos that we put out. But the reality is that the other skills, the life skills, the wraparound services, understanding how to make it through conflict, understanding how to interact with coworkers and your boss, he was endowed with all of those through his Snap E&T training. And culinary didn't work out for him. I don't know why, but he's running a moving company now. He's in a better place and a better job.
Right.
So sometimes folks do need a little skills retraining, but they've still got all those basics. So, you know, we continue to put folks in a better place than they were before they started. And that's really what the Secretary says about, are they better off tomorrow than they are today? So a very important metric is, do they have a job, and what is their income? Are we moving them forward in that regard? But we also have to remember that there's so many benefits that aren't always so easily measured in these programs.
So I think what you're saying is that moving forward never stops.
That's exactly right.
It just keeps on
Yeah.
going, and for every today there is another tomorrow.
It is.
And so there's just, it just continues.
It is, and that's what, you know, when we talk about, when the Secretary says to ask, how can you make folks better off today? He didn't say, go inspire your team to say, how can we make folks better off? He said, inspire your team to say, every day when you show up, what can I do today to make folks better off than they are today? And that's why I love to talk about the future and plan in the future. And you know, I love my little offset strategy sessions. Good leaders got to plan where we're going. But the reality is that that's ongoing. That's why I do think the future is now, because we are doing so much good now, and we just have to continue to build on that.
Yeah.
We have so much opportunity to serve Americans.
We really do. We really do. Okay, so I have another question for you.
Okay.
And this one I think fits in some ways with what we're talking about, because it is about that next day and that next day. This is from Andrea McConnell with the Minnesota Department of Human Services. And she says, currently job retention is offered for a minimum of 30 days, but not more than 90 days. Would USDA F&S consider extending the maximum amount of time providers can offer job retention to 1 year?
Well, Jessica, I am aware of a lot of research and literature that suggests that ongoing support services for individuals once they enter a job can dramatically increase retention and their ability. We talked about all these. It's not just culinary training, or could be moving skills training, right? Some of us need a little more strength if we're going to do that type of thing. But whatever it is, they're learning their skills, but we teach the life skills and financial management and all of that. But particularly when you're talking about shorter programs, we talked about the 3-week program earlier, you don't learn all your needed life skills in 3 weeks. We learn every day. Right? It's true for all of us. Right now, we're certainly learning new things every day about how to succeed in life. Kids at home learning on computers and trying to work virtually, all of those kind of things. So these kind of random interventions will come at families. And when you have limited resources, it makes it more difficult to overcome those. And it's not always just limited financial resources. It's a lot of different limited resources that families deal with in different ways, which is why we have to be looking from a human-centered perspective at what their need is. So I'm inclined to believe the literature that says that they can be better off with longer retention services once we get them in. But statute says I can't do that past 90 days. Congress, it says 90 days is the statute. So for now, that's what we offer. And that's a big progression from the 30 days we had before. I think that's right. We went from 30 to 90. So we're watching very closely how that serves our recipients, and I understand that we do have a pilot going, a demonstration project in 2 states for a year. Now, our demonstration authority is a little bit more difficult. It requires some funding offset. Congress gave us a few strings on that front. But we're looking at that closely, and we want to make sure that as we do that in just a handful of states, that we're getting the data necessary to say to all of our stakeholders, this is worth the ongoing investment. We need to know
Exactly.
that. And so, yes, would we consider it? Absolutely. I think that's what we're doing now. We're committed to looking at that closely. If there's some others that are interested, happy to talk to you. Now, I don't believe in demonstrations being everybody. That's no demo. But we want to get a handful in who we believe can do a good job, watch that very closely, and see what the data says. And if we're serving people better, we need to have a conversation about that.
Okay. All right. Terrific. So, Brandon, I think that's where we are with the questions.
Okay.
I do appreciate you being on the hot seat like that.
It's good to be here with you.
I really do appreciate your support and your leadership so much. I want to take a moment to talk to our audience for a second. First, I want to thank all of our great presenters over the last 3 days and the ones who will be speaking this afternoon as well. In addition to the lineup of breakout sessions that we have this afternoon, we are going to host 15 interactive discussion sessions that folks can choose from. They'll be starting around 2:15 Eastern Time. And they will give you the opportunity to talk face-to-face with peers and colleagues. And I think that's a really interesting way to reflect on what you've learned in your individual breakout sessions that we've had throughout the event. So make sure and check that out. I also want to say that I'm really honored to have been a part of this event, and I am extremely proud. You've referenced them several times, Brandon, but the OET staff at FNS and the regions at FNS and our communications office, people from your office have worked tirelessly to put this event together. But I have kind of a special place in my heart for my own staff because they have worked tirelessly through all of this. We appreciate the partners that we have out in the field who have taken time to share their expertise with us. As I understand it, we had around 1,700 register for this conference. We really appreciate every one of you who have tuned in this week and who have participated. One thing I've really loved to watch is that chat. That chat, I mean, it's not like it's just the people who are presenting. The people in the chat are also engaging and sharing, and so much that we're learning. But this does conclude the plenary session for this morning. And it's the last time you're going to hear from us here at FNS during the National Forum. Please remember to complete your evaluation forms for the forum. They're available on the virtual platform. It's really important for us to get your feedback. We take it very seriously. It will help us design future events. And let me tell you, Brandon's already told us we have to do a second national forum.
We're on it.
Tell us what you think we did right. Tell us what you think we did wrong. Tell us what we can do to make it even better next time. But stay with us today. The show isn't over. We've got lots of the breakout sessions this afternoon. We've got the discussions. And I just can't wait to see what happens next. So that's it from me, folks. But Brandon, can I ask you, do you have any final remarks?
I always have some final remarks, Jessica, so thanks for the opportunity. Thank you so much to you and your team for your leadership on an issue that is so important to so many Americans. It's really important to all of us, not just the families that we serve, but being able to help move families forward. I was so excited when the Secretary reemphasized our need to make sure that we're moving families forward and focused us on that. And the everyday question of what can we do to make the families we serve better off tomorrow than they are today. You've been focused on that, all of our leadership at FNS. I was so thankful to see the regions participate in that first day of sessions. Your regional administrators and their teams are ready to serve you, as is SNAP and OET, we call it, but it's Office of Employment and Training at USDA. It's been a wonderful conference. I know so many members on your team, Marcy and others, have worked so hard on putting this conference on. A rare shout out to a contractor of ours who was with us through a number of last minute changes as we tried to pivot from in person to virtual, and I think a wonderful conference. I even figured out how to participate in the chat and got a little bit of that in yesterday, so I was excited. We do want you to hang around this afternoon. On behalf of the Secretary and the Deputy Secretary and myself, all of the leadership team at USDA and FNS, we are so thankful that you joined us this week. I want to thank each one of you for your participation in this conference, for taking the time to be here, and for making a difference in the lives of the people that we serve. I'm going to leave, but I'm going to leave you with a video about my experience at Liberty's Kitchen, where they say they're cooking up a community where everyone can succeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the greatest privileges of my job is traveling across the country to see our programs in action. The impact that these programs have in the lives of so many Americans is truly inspiring. Among them, SNAP Employment is Training is special because I get to meet individuals working to build a better future for themselves and their families. They're investing their time and effort in something new, difficult, and often out of their comfort zone. Last year, when traveling was a little easier, I visited Liberty's Kitchen in New Orleans, which is a partnership between the state of Louisiana and a local United Way to expand workforce training for SNAP recipients. Their food service training program helps young adults build skills in classrooms and training kitchens, helps place them in jobs, and provides the follow-up support to help them succeed and to sustain that success on their own. Many of the students faced hardship growing up, but they found hope through this program. And as you will hear me say often, hope is not a wish, but a pathway forward. Through this program, they not only learned new hard and soft skills, but they learned important things about themselves.